early in my career, I think it was my third job after graduating from college, was with a large conglomerate family business. The business, I worked in a division, actually I worked in a business unit inside of a division. That's how big it was. And it was a very traditional organization. This is back in the early 1980s. And I was excited to show up there. I mean, again, it was a global company and great benefits for me. I was just newly married. So I thought I had really, hit the jackpot as far as a job goes. And as I started working, I realized it was a very autocratic organization. There was a lot of political fiefdoms in the company. Managers managed by fear and intimidation. And I had just recently left the Army as a young officer. And so I kind of thought, well, maybe being in large corporate America was similar to the military. So I just kind of took it as standard. But then I started becoming a little bit more concerned as people were resigning, whether it was senior staff or junior staff. And that's when I started really understanding that maybe it is true that people don't quit organizations, they leave their bosses. So, but looking at that turmoil, I knew deep down something was wrong, but I just couldn't put my finger on it. One thing I did know, which was interesting, is this particular business unit had never made a profit. So eventually there was a change in leaders. And I'll never forget it. It was about 2 years after I'd been working there. This new leader came into my little business unit, which was predominantly, we were blue collar organization, and he showed up in his three-piece suit. I remember, I don't know why I remember this, but he had wingtip shoes on. And we met in the warehouse, dusty old warehouse. And he took his jacket off and sat down with all of us and just started asking lots of questions. I mean, lots of questions. It was impressive to me. I mean, I had never talked to the former CEO before. I saw him only one time at a trade show, I think it was. But this guy on his first week was here in my operation talking to hundreds of employees. I was impressed. I later learned that he wasn't only talking with employees, he was talking with customers and suppliers. He even engaged with the community leaders that we were operating in. Every stakeholder he could find, he talked to, and he was asking questions. Very impressive to me. Well, since the division really never had a history of making profit, what he did is he focused tirelessly on one thing. That was culture. He focused on the employees. Well, to tell you what happened is he was so focused that he invited me to a retreat. It was 2 one-week retreats off-site. I was the youngest person there. And you're not going to believe it, but we worked on writing our value statement and our vision statement for 2 weeks. It was amazing. But it was engaging and it was thrilling for me. And I got back to my job and I noticed something different right away. Employees were more engaged. I was more engaged. I was excited to go to work every day. Our quality was improving. Employee retention was record high. That first year that new leader was there, we broke even. We still didn't turn a profit, but we broke even. But do you know that he inspired everyone to stretch and improve and actually take ownership, think like an owner? And after that first year that he was there where we broke even, for the next 24 years I was there with that company, we were profitable. We made big profits, the highest profits for the industry. So I think possibly John Maxwell really has it right. Everything rises and falls on leadership. Hi, my name's Rob Ferguson. I'm the founder of Ferguson Alliance. And our passion here at the firm is to reverse a very troubling trend that we see with family businesses. That is that the average lifespan of a family business has been declining over the past 50 years. My colleagues, David Schlossberg and Brandy Merrick, we all have been dedicated with our careers with family businesses. We've either been non-family member executives, we've been shareholders, or we've been board members in family business. So this webinar is a continuation of our Prosperity Plan series for family business. As you probably are getting to notice, we're doing a couple of webinars a month. The webinars I'm doing is a real focus on our Prosperity Plan, and David and Brandy have been doing some other really interesting topical webinars, whether it's on how to shift from being a rainmaker to an architect, or how to work on culture of excellence. So I hope today you will find this interesting and a refresher on our Prosperity Plan. We're going to be talking about leadership in family business and kind of my perspectives about leading. So here's our agenda today. Again, I'm going to do a quick review of our Prosperity Plan. I'm going to share some what I think are alarming statistics around leadership. And then we're going to talk about, well, what is leadership really? Really, what is it? And then what are some of the essential leadership traits I believe are important? And then some next steps. Little housekeeping. Please, we'd like to make this interactive. So if you have a question, enter that question in the chat. My colleagues are going to be monitoring that. And if they think it's appropriate to interrupt me, they will. They always do interrupt me anyway. And we can address the question at the end of the presentation. So with that, let's get started with a review of prosperity. We got to start with, well, what does it mean? Well, we can go to the dictionary, we can look it up, and we have that listed there. But that's not how we look at it. Really and truly, prosperity is what you, the business owner, what you decide it means. However a business family chooses to define prosperity, don't you really think it ought to be more than just status or money? We think so. That's what we encourage our clients to think about. We believe it should include how that organization, how their business is going to impact all of the stakeholders that the business serves, employees, the community, customers. So to reach that zone of prosperity, the impact of the business will ultimately define your legacy. And that business will keep it grounded as it continues to grow. So there's a ripple effect. That's why we think it's important to reverse the trend of family businesses, to let them live longer and let them live from one generation to the next and let them become prosperous. Because as that family business prospers, so do the employees. They have better opportunities for their career and their income. Hopefully suppliers will also prosper and increase in their size and value. And then the community, it prospers with philanthropy and other community projects. So I guess in a nutshell, striving for prosperity, everybody wins. There's not a negative reason for prosperity. So before we get into prosperity, we have to understand where the business is in their life cycle. This is really where we are coming from at Alliance. If this is the life cycle, we're trying to improve this life cycle. We're trying to stretch the time out longer for multiple generations. We have to study the life cycle of an organization because we believe it's natural and predictable. And it's based on time and growth, as you can see on the two axes. So by analyzing where a business is with its life cycle, we can actually predict some of the problems that they're going to face in the future and how best to deal with them. As you can see, there's 7 stages of the family business life cycle. If you're interested in learning more about these stages, I recommend you go to our website, ferguson-alliance.com, go to our resource page, and you'll see a list of webinars. And we have the prosperity webinar up there, and we go into great detail about these stages. We focus with companies that are between prime and middle age. Sometimes we have clients that are senior, very rarely that are twilight. But our whole goal is to try to keep clients in this zone of in this prime state, which is where the zone of prosperity really lives. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. You know you're in the zone of prosperity when it just feels that way. Brandy Merrick talked about the vibe. in one of her webinars that she was doing on culture. And she's absolutely right that there's just a feeling or a sense that, you know, we've got a handle on things. We're working well as a team. We're unified around our commitments. We don't have a lot of identity egos perpetuating the business. But the most important thing is we're getting great feedback from the market. Our customers are very happy. We're not having to hire a lot of recruiters because we have a lot of employee turnover. In fact, we've got employees standing at our door wanting to come to work for us. So if some of these things sound really great or almost sound like utopia, it is possible. You can get there. But let me be very clear. It is a very chaotic time in the prosperity zone. The reason why it's chaotic is because one of the key attributes about being in the prosperity zone is you're constantly changing. See, you look at change as a good thing. You embrace improving. You think improving is available for everything that you do. And so the key is to really, really find that place of prosperity is learning how to take that entrepreneurial spirit, take that quest for change and balance it with structure. See, once your structure is in balance with your flexibility in an organization, you're actually at that prosperous place. So there's a lot of barriers that get in the way of prosperity. I've listed several here, but this is going to tie into our leadership conversation today. The number one barrier to prosperity, you look at it, it's right there, leadership. Leadership doesn't have a vision. And number two is lack of alignment and low trust. Well, if you want to know more about alignment, I am going to be referring to alignment throughout the next few minutes. But we did an entire webinar last month on alignment. I think you'll find it very interesting. All right. So how do we get there? How do we get our clients to the prosperity zone? We've developed this little model. And it's a building, as you can see. We call it, or we think of it as your family's treasury. However you want to look at it. But our belief is prosperity is ultimately achieved and maintained when the family business legacy is integrated with the business growth direction and its overall value is created from that. You see, we define legacy as the mark the business leaves on the world, and we see growth defined as the increasing business impact that it makes to its stakeholders. And value ultimately defines the richness or really the health of the business. It's more than just dollars and profits. So at Alliance, we believe businesses are living organisms comprised of people. We also believe that businesses can live infinitely, and they can. We have a lot of examples. They can only do this, though, if the business has a dynamic shared vision, a really strong organization structure, and a disciplined system for managing. You see, those are the pillars to prosperity that we help show our clients on how to build that into their business. All of it is built on top of a foundation of the family values that have been with your family for generations, and those family values are ultimately integrated in business culture. So anyway, that's our prosperity model. You'll notice that we have building blocks for each pillar. There's 9 key elements that we go through, and that's what this webinar series is about. And we're on the second pillar, and we're talking about leadership. So you can just quickly see, we talked about our shared vision on our April 14th webinar, and answering that question, will you be a business first family or a family first business? I think that was a lot of fun for many participants. And then in May, we talked about impact. What is the impact that the business is going to have? And how do you determine that? We talked about the different directional statements such as purpose, vision, and mission. And then last month in June, we explored the signs of a company where there is no alignment. And we talked about, well, how do you get that alignment? And we shared one of our tools that we have. It's called the alignment triangle tool. And we talked extensively about how balanced structure with flexibility. So that just kind of gives you a recap of our past webinars and where we are today. We're on leadership. And the other elements of growth are talent and trust, which we'll be talking about in the next couple of months. You see, with leadership, it's our belief, the reason we built this pillar is that a weak organization is not going to be able to sustain growth. There's just no way. That's why we call this organizational strength. How do you maintain organizational strength? And obviously, it starts with leadership. So to kind of punch up the point, let's talk about the ancient kings. You know, coming back to my earlier comments about everything rises and falls on leadership. When I look at these ancient kings back in the Bible, and the two books in the Bible, and as I read those chapters and verses, you know, I noticed that whenever the Israelites had an excellent king or leader, everything went great. They were defeating their enemies, they were maintaining peace, and they had prosperity. But it was a real disaster when they had a bad king. So it's obvious to me, reading those, and as I was thinking about this leadership webinar, well, wow, this has been around forever. It's so obvious that when you have a bad leader, things are going to be bad, okay? The nation cannot prosper. It cannot grow. So leadership is everything, folks. Now, how weak or strong are you as a leader or the leader that you're working with? How aware are you of your leadership abilities? Are you consciously or unconsciously aware? Do you listen to feedback? Do you encourage feedback on your leadership attributes? Have you ever taken a leadership assessment before? Just look at your organization. Is it thriving? Is your organization very similar to what I described about an organization that's in the prosperity zone? Or do you find disgruntled employees, high turnover, you know, your customer base crumbling? You see, you cannot have sustained growth and prosperity without strong leadership. So here's some interesting, maybe even alarming statistics. And there's a lot of statistics out there. I got this from a research Gallup did. A staggering 79% of employees will quit after receiving inadequate appreciation from their managers. 70, that's a big number. And it's appreciation. It's not bonuses. It's a thank you. Thank you for doing a job. And if you don't do that, they're going to quit. No wonder we're experiencing such high turnover rates. No wonder our country today has 11 million job openings. Amazing. Almost 70% of millennials are concerned that their workplace does not develop their leadership skills. In my mind, that's everybody. Millennials are entering the workforce, you know, by the hordes. I mean, that's the biggest generation that we have. And it's up to us to help teach and train and develop their skills because they're going to be taking over the businesses. Yeah, I put this one in here. Women, when I started work back in the late 70s and 80s, you know, women were just really entering the workforce. Today, I mean, they're an institution. And yet, when I look at boards and board governance, you know, the number of women on boards is still really low. It's only about 15%. Now, that's a lot better than what it was 40 years ago. But shouldn't it be even better than that? Shouldn't it be representative of the women that we have in the workforce? I think it should. In business, 83% of the companies say developing leaders is crucial. Okay, so here's the big disconnect for me. I continued to do research on this and read further into this survey. And one of the things that really stood out is that 55% of the CEOs in this survey said that their number one challenge was the next generation of leaders. So over half the CEOs are saying their biggest challenge out of everything that we're looking at is the next generation of leaders. Well, I guess this kind of makes sense because 69% of millennials don't believe they're getting trained and developed. So what are we doing about it? Well, that's what we as leaders have to be doing. right? We have to take that responsibility to build the bench. We cannot just have the organization become dependent on us. Remember, we believe at Alliance that the businesses live forever, not the individuals. So what is leadership? This slide might be familiar to you. This is a slide that I used in the alignment workshop. These are kind of my 6 tips for alignment. All I did is change the title because that's what leadership does. It aligns and clarifies where we're going. Leadership is all about moving the team forward to the destination not yet realized. How do you do that? Well, I think in last month's webinar on alignment, I made a really strong case of how important and vital it is to keep the team focused, to do their very best work. Well, who does that? Well, that is leadership. So the leader does it, but it's the act of leadership that makes it happen. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. As your business grows, it gets harder to get aligned people. I get that. No doubt I had that experience. We had over 4,000 employees, grew from 300 to 4,000. It was hard to keep everybody aligned. But I think these essentials right here, and if you'll notice, it's all about communicating, right? Leaders take a key role in communicating the strategy. They communicate, the context of the company, of how to keep everyday tasks connected to their long-term goals. They communicate the company's purpose and vision and mission. They say it over and over again. They provide structure for formal communication that they're not involved in to make sure others are talking about purpose, vision, and mission. They're constantly appreciating employees. They're trying to catch people doing it right versus catching people doing it wrong. And that lifts up the organization. And then really and truly, they're communicating the results of the business by being very transparent. You see kind of how it's one and the same, leadership and all right, so I can't help it. We build models at Ferguson Alliance. So this is our leadershiping model. And no, we didn't misspell it. We just added a new word to the dictionary. You see, we're trying to take the noun leader and convert it into an action verb by putting as leadershiping. You see, leaders lead with aligning the organization by first being the example. And then second, they have to set the tone and the pace of the company. And they do that with their organization structures, maybe their system for managing, their budgets, their policies, even compensation helps provide that alignment to the future to help really understand where's the destination. And then they clarify that future by bringing it to the present. What I mean is being very clear with the purpose of the company, why the company exists, why we do what we do, the vision of the company, what is it going to look like when we get there, and the mission, what's most important that we have to achieve, and the strategy of how we're going to do that. So we're going to kind of unpack this a little bit today to get a little bit clearer on what we're talking about. So that's leadershiping, and that's really what we believe the role and the activities of leadership is. So this is our alignment model. We went through it in a long detail last month's webinar, but this is very important. This is how a leader keeps the organization aligned. This is where they're focusing their communication. They're being very clear on what is an aspirational goal or objective versus what is a near-term must-have. So the way to read this tool is at the very top of the organization. It's the most aspirational of the company. It's something you're always striving to do, such as your core values, your purpose, and your vision. And then as you work down the triangle, it becomes a little bit more objective. So the mission, strategic intents, and goals are more measurable and more finite. And then as you get to the base of the triangle, it's very specific and objective. The key result areas, the projects and initiatives that management's assigned to take care of in a limited time, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. And then obviously your annual budgets and plans. And you can see we kind of put the timeline. These are rough. The base is about 1 year in focus. the middle part, the lime green, is 3 to 5 years, and the top of the model is 10 years or more. So that's the alignment triangle. And again, you're happy to go, if you have time, go listen to the alignment webinar. I think you get a lot out of it. So I'm trying to make the case that really and truly, leadershiping is all about communicating, right? The leader has to be out front. And you cannot get clarity with the leader sitting behind their desk, behind a closed door. Leaders have to be out front. And clarity will certainly improve with leaders, but also will not. And we know plenty of leaders. We get introduced to all sorts of leadership types. I'm not talking about styles. I'm just talking about the act, the activity of leading, where some leaders, they don't even show up to work today. They manage their business from their living room, even though they might have scores or hundreds of people back in the office. They certainly don't subscribe to that. You see, there's some critical characteristics of communicating your intents. You know, we believe that there's 4. We talk a lot about this with our impact webinar, but the why. Leaders have to be able to convey why we are doing what we're doing. I remember back when I first started my career, when I would question the why, I was told, you don't need to know the why, just do it. Well, how many of you all have ever had that said to you? For me, that was very demoralizing. It was unempowering. See, so the opposite, if employees know the why, well, that empowers them. And that's going to help them become more independent. They're going to be able to make better decisions. And you won't have to be driving all the decisions and activities. So again, I think leaders describe what the why is. Empower your employees. The second one is the what. You know, well, the what is what does that destination that we haven't realized, what does it look like? My experience tells me that the reason why we fail to accomplish our goals is because we don't have clarity on what we're trying to achieve. So leaders have to provide a really clear, very succinct description of what the end state really looks like. And that will enable the rest of the organization to take the necessary steps to move things forward to attain the goal. Okay, this one is really difficult for a lot of leaders in family businesses. And that is conveying the essential details, but you don't want to give too many details. Because if you give too many details, that is going to handcuff innovation. It's going to hinder your employees from acting independently. We should be encouraging employees to make decisions and encouraging them to make mistakes, because we learn from those mistakes. We call it failing forward, so to speak. So leaders really need to resist the urge to micromanage the too many details, because that definitely thwarts initiative. And what it does, maybe a leader wants this, you know, it's an unintended consequence that they like, but it creates dependency on you as a leader if you micromanage. So you've got to resist that. Lastly, keep it simple. It's the old KISS process. We know we've talked about, most of you all know that, but you need to keep things simple. So resist the urge of putting your strategic plans into a 3-ring notebook or a PowerPoint slide presentation with fancy graphs and charts. Don't do that, because what I have found is it doesn't provide clarity, it provides ambiguity. People get more enthralled with the graphs, the graphic designs, than the substance of what you're trying to say. So what we did at Ferguson Alliance is we show our clients how to have a 1-page strategic plan to keep it really simple, makes the statement really clear on what your 10 is and what your focus is. It helps your employees understand the why without telling them the how. So a good 1-page strategic plan is really easy to understand. All right, so I think I've made the point now that one of the key elements of what makes a really good leader is clear communication. I mean, I'm not going to go further down there. I could talk probably on that all day long, but clear communication is one of the most essential traits that a leader has to have. You see, there's things happening in our world today that are changing so fast that leadership has to stay on top of things. And if they don't have these 10 essentials, communication being one, you're going to have weak leadership. Leaders need to be passionate about their work. Well, many leaders are not necessarily passionate about the trade, but they're passionate about their work. So I'm making that distinction. Remember that leader that I told you about that really inspired me at a young career, and for 24 years we made profit? He came from a box plant. His background was selling boxes. Well, we were an agriculture company. He had a hard time just spelling tree. So being an agriculture company wasn't his passion. His passion about his work was transforming an organization and empowering the employees. So the leader has to have a passion. The other thing is he really could care less about being popular. I come across many leaders, they're leading for the wrong reason. They're leading for the title. They're leading for maybe the benefits that come with it, the bonuses, the cars, the salary. They're leading for their ego. You can't lead. Good, effective leaders cannot do that, because at some point in time, you're going to have to make some really tough calls if you're trying to be popular with the team, and then all of a sudden you see something that may be out of compliance or may not be ethical, and now you have to take action against a team member that you're trying to be popular with. It's impossible. Leaders have to have an open mind trait. You always have to be considering it possible. You always be asking, why do we do it this way? And leaders need to be servant leaders, in my mind. I think that the typical organizational hierarchy with the leader at the top and everybody else coming down, I think it needs to be flipped upside down. I think the leader needs to be at the bottom, serving up to the organization. Once a leader understands that they work for their employees, that's their customer, you'll have a strong leader. Leaders have to be encouraging and positive, and not unrealistic, and not rose-colored glasses, but an advocate for the company, an advocate for the employees, a cheerleader. They have to be able to respect others, and they will then get respect. You don't demand respect, you earn the respect. And you do that by respecting the others that you're working with, and you're building those relationships. You're building relationships so you can get better connectivity with what you're trying to do, why you're trying to go there, and what difference it really makes. How many examples do we have where leaders did not lead by example? I always use the one related to Enron, where the leadership team of Enron and with their board of directors made a decision to set aside their core values to make certain decisions, which ultimately was the demise to Enron. So leaders have to be authentic, and they've got to lead by example. And lastly, I believe leaders should never, ever stop learning. If you think you're too smart, you think you know everything, that is probably your downside. I brought back a few slides from the last webinar, and this particular slide I brought up talking about the title that we used is Clear Direction, Easy Hand on the Steering. Well, that means no micromanaging, right? High performance teams always keep the end in sight. They know what the ultimate objectives of their work are. So in my rowboat example, there's a ninth person in the boat called a coxswain, and that's the one who steers the boat, right? But it's interesting, that person has to steer the boat with a very easy hand. You don't want to be zigzagging down the course. You got to always keep your eyes 2,000 meters down the waterway to your goal. Same thing with leadership. That's the role that leaders have. Always be looking 2,000 meters. Always be looking at the horizon, trying to peek around the corners to anticipate some of the challenges or risks that may be coming up. So the fact of the matter is, what leaders do is they get really great balance in the workplace. It's not about how hard you work. It's how leaders are able to get everybody to work hard together. So I know this was just a short little webinar, but I wanted to just make the point. I think John Maxwell really has it right. Everything does rise and fall on leadership. In leadership, you need to be in that role, and you need to be providing leadership for the right reason, which is for your employees, your customers, and all your other stakeholders. It's not about self. So everybody can be a leader, and everybody can do leadershiping. In summary, the first element of the strong organization is effective leadership, but it's not a position or a role. Everyone should be contributing to leadershiping, bringing the future to the present. Having a shared vision is a start to establishing your legacy, no doubt, but it's strong leaders that align and clarify that future so the present can realize that destination unknown. Listen, I really do appreciate you all signing up for these webinars. It means a lot to us, and we'd love to talk to you some more. So if you want to know more about how we do our work here at Alliance, or you have somebody you think we ought to talk to, drop us an email, give us a call on our toll-free number. Check out our website. We've got a tremendous amount of content on the website. We have several information kits that we'd be happy to send over to you. Sign up for our emails, newsletters, and we'll keep you posted on these webinars. And just for future reference, if you can't make a webinar, no worries, because you might go ahead and just make it a practice to sign up for our webinars. If you don't make it, no worries, we'll send you a copy of the webinar, and you can then look at it at your leisure.